So, I wanted to preface this video by saying that this review is most likely going to be very spoiler heavy, just as a word of warning. If you don't want to be spoiled, then I suggest clicking off the video now. So, a couple days ago I beat Pokemon Sword and Shield. Well, I specifically beat Shield. My friend is borrowing my copy of Sword. And I wanted to give it a few days to sort of sit in my mind, sort of let my thoughts sink in, do a lot of the after-game stuff, see if there was anything I was, really missing about the game. But now I think I can formulate a good enough review of the game after all of the hours I've put into it. So I'll just go through my little list of pros and cons here, and I'll try to elaborate, and I'll give my completely honest thoughts as much as possible. So yeah, here we go. Okay, so I will start off this video, or this review, by saying that, in my personal opinion, Pokemon Sword and Shield were very average. Painfully so, in fact. I don't know if I would say it's on the higher scale of average, or if it's really starting to reach the subpar version of average. But yeah, average is average, and that's just what I thought of it. So let's go over why I think this. So first I'm going to start off with the pros, because hey, we all like a good startup, don't we? Anyway, this is going to be a big one, but I think that the gyms are handled the best that they've ever been. I like how the region of Galar actually draws more attention to the gym battles. It doesn't feel like you're going to the back room of a gym, and then you're beating up an adult and just taking their money. It feels like a spectacle, which I think it should be treated more as, especially with a lot of the sports motif that they have going on. Like at the beginning of the game, you don't even get your first gym badge for a while. But they're like, welcome to Modestoke Stadium. Now meet all of the gym leaders that trainers will face in their gym challenge. And it's like an orientation kind of thing. And then you do your first gym. That's cool. I like that. And of course, you actually do gym battles in the middle of a giant stadium. That hasn't happened since, like, the Stadium games, fitting titles, or, like, Coliseum XD? So it's nice that they finally integrated that into the main series, and it makes gym battles worth remembering. And another thing that makes the gyms great, that kind of factors into another positive that I have with the game, is that the music really, pumps up the more the gym battle goes on. So it's like, when they reach their final Pokemon, when the gym leader reaches their final Pokemon, there will be, a revamped version of the regular gym theme, and then you'll hear these chants in the crowd to show, oh, this is the final Pokemon, it's coming down to the wire. That's a really good touch right there. I like that. So yeah, that's one point in favor of Sword and Shield. Gym battles are handled spectacularly. And then the next point, again, one more warning, spoilers, is that I think the League is the best it's also ever been handled. A couple things like that are they're the best that they've ever been handled, in my opinion. For example, you know how in the previous games you fought 4 Elite Four members and then a champion? And it was in later games where you could actually choose what Elite Four members you wanted to face off against, so you could do them in any order you wanted to. Well, now it's a bit different. It's a bit more like the anime of Pokemon, where it's like a bracket tournament. So it's like you have a best of 8, or you could be a runner-up, or a finalist, or whatever, a champion. It's kind of like that. You fight against the different gym leaders, and they have stronger teams. It is handled better than just beat 4 trainers, beat the champion, you're done. And the thing is, when you go to rematch the Champion Cup, it randomizes the amount of not the amount of challengers, but the ones that do come. You can make a special request, hey, could you invite this gym challenger, or this gym leader, to come to the stadium? And they'll be like, okay, we can fulfill that request. It's a really nice change of pace from the end game of previous games, and again, it's something else that I quite like, because it adds a bit of competitiveness in the feel of the region. I don't know, that's the best way I can describe it. I guess a quick positive point that I mentioned earlier is that, once again, it's Pokemon. The music's usually pretty good. It's at least listenable, in my opinion. You have a lot of atmospheric stuff, in some of the routes you'll have, bagpipes playing, which shows that this is a region based off of, North Wales, Scottish, England kind of thing. It's a nice little touch of catharsis. It helps blend in with the realm. Not the realm, the region, I'm sorry. Some of the battle themes are really good. Some of them range from it's not doing much for me, but some of the later game stuff I really jammed out to, and the boutique theme is an absolute banger. I love listening to it. I'll probably put it in this video. So yeah, soundtrack's pretty good. That's kind of a series standard for Pokemon. Okay, positive point number 4 is that like this, the tradition I feel ever since X and Y, maybe Black and White, is that a lot of the character designs are really interesting and cool. They're often themed, so like, there's a dragon-type gym leader, and he'll kind of sort of dress like a dragon, like, one of his, I guess, coats kind of has like the belly scales of a dragon, and his little headband kind of looks like the fangs of a dragon. His name is Raihan, and he's like the last gym leader you fight. He has a really cool design. I like Nessa's, I like the sportiness, and I love the, like, blue streaks through her hair. Melanie is my personal favorite, because I've posted this on my personal Facebook before, but, I like how Melanie is a bigger character who's not portrayed as, like, being lesser than, like, other people. Like, she's not clumsy, she's not overly mean, or old, or snotty, or, like, uppity, whatever. She is portrayed just like a normal person, you know? I'm not really one to, like, go on about the whole, oh, representation, but I think Pokemon these past few gens have been doing a nice job at sort of portraying other, like, ethnicities, races, just sort of body types and all that, and I think that's really cool. Also, Melanie is an absolute goddess. In this YouTube channel, we worship a queen, and that queen's name is Melanie. A couple other characters I liked Alistair. I wasn't a big fan of him before because the Shy Guy kind of mask turned me off, but I ended up liking him. He was a good guy. Just a lot of really cool character designs. They don't feel as, like, template or as sort of generic as they once used to look, and that's always a nice thing, that it is trying to differentiate itself from previous Pokemon entries. And make of this what you will, but I'm really on my final point for the positives. A lot of the Pokemon designs are cool. I think one of the weird things, like, some of the people I've talked to say, oh, these Pokemon designs are really weird. And I think what makes them weird is that a lot of them were not revealed officially, and have still not really been revealed officially, like the starters' evolutions and a lot of the other sorts of Pokemon. I think they tried to take a few hints from, like, Sun and Moon's launch, how they revealed so much, and now they tried to hide it, except for the fact that leaks happened, unfortunately, or for better or for worse. But I guess maybe give it about a few months and then people will start to warm up to a lot of the other, like, new Pokemon that weren't formally revealed. Like, I love Rillaboom's design, I love Grimmsnarl, I love Duraludon, and there are a couple others that I, like, really like, but these three designs definitely stood out to me the most. And that about wraps it up for all of the, like, specifically good points about Sword and Shield. So I'm sorry if this next part of the video is ranty, but this is just... it's all my opinion, you can disagree if you want, but these are just things that I've noticed and that I personally feel, so let's get into the cons. I'm going to be very upfront about this. The story sucks. Possibly one of the worst stories in Pokemon's history. The big reason for that is that it feels like nothing happens, or everything happens all at once and it's very brief. Like, when I said that the gym challenge was handled really well, that's more or less the only aspect of the game that I think is handled exceedingly well. Well, that and the Championship League, but it's that my problem, though, is that it takes up everything. Almost everything, essentially. Like, whenever you start to learn more about Galar's past, you're constantly told, oh, well, enough about that, go keep doing your gym challenge. And when something really interesting happens, like you hear a huge boom in the distance, and Sonia's like, oh, what's that? Leon immediately comes in and says, oh, I'll take care of it, citizens. Oh, you should go and keep doing your gym challenge, little kid. That's the real big important thing here. It's like, no, stop treating me like a child. In Diamond and Pearl, I would go to the different lakes to try to stop Team Galactic and their admins. Don't tell me that I can't handle a big Pokemon. A big problem in this comes in the form of Eternatus, who is the game's, like, third legendary. Like, you know how there's Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde? This game has Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus. And the big thing is that Eternatus, to an extent, is irrelevant. He is never mentioned by name until you actually really get to that climactic part of the game, and after you catch him, he's almost never mentioned again. It's like, there's not enough elaboration on him, there is no real build-up to him. He's just like Chairman Rose, who's kind of the main antagonist of the game, is just like, oh, I've reawakened Eternatus so I can stop a tragedy from happening in the next 1,000 years. But it's like, who Eternatus, though? What's his story? Why does he look like diaphanization, which is a scientific term? Why is he here? Why do you need him to prevent this darkest day? What do Zacian and Zamazenta really do? What's their sort of... How did they save the world back then? There's no elaboration besides, oh, maybe in the old days the two heroes did this. Okay. How? Why? There's no explanation for anything besides basic thing happened. I guess one of the only things I liked about the story, and again, spoilers, is that the 7th gym leader, Piers, helps you through a lot of the game, because he's just sort of following around. He's the older brother of Marnie, who's like the quote-unquote leader of Team Yell, and they're not even really a bad team. Piers will sometimes help out, and he just joins along, just because. I think that makes it a bigger shame because a lot of the gym leaders have almost no relevance outside of just being their gym leaders, just doing their basic duty, when they could have had a bit more character, like you could have seen them outside of the gym doing other things. I like the league cards, how they give a basic description of them and maybe give a little bit of insight to their life, but it's not enough. It leaves me wanting more. The story feels very incomplete, or it feels very much set up for a third version, or like a sequel. Also, speaking of story, postgame is trash. It has some of the least likable characters in the series. The two guys, its names are Swordward and Shieldbird. I hate them. Not only are they garbage designs, but they're so annoying. They pop up out of nowhere and saying, oh, we're the royal family. Sonia, your book contains a bunch of lies. But they never explain what the lies are, really. And they never try to delve into any truth or sort of compromise. Everything happens so fast, but it feels like at the same time, nothing happens. All you do in the postgame is fight a couple Dynamax Pokemon, face Swordward Shieldbert, catch your respective legendary, and then fight Hop one more time. And then it ends. That's it. Literally, you fight Hop. Oh, I lost again. Fade to black. The end in the bottom right. You can now unlock the Battle Tower. So many little signs of this game just point to it being rushed, more so than usual, and that just bugs me, Another thing I personally don't like is that the region feels very linear. Like, I know that people were memeing on it because, oh, it looked like it was just a straight line. And to an extent, you're right. There are a couple times where you have to, circle through an entire, section of the region, but it's still, you're just circling it in a straight sort of, one-note circle. Not really any diverging off the routes. You can't, go to different paths to get to the region, to get to your next route. If you want to get from Route 7 to Route 8, it's very much just a one-way trip. It's incredibly linear. And I just feel like that doesn't do much in the way of exploration, except, the occasional item or TM or whatever. Speaking of the linear region, it feels like there are no dungeons in the game. How you'd have your certain caves and stuff, or your little factories? There's none of that in this game. Now, the wild area has its ups and downs. Yes, I like the idea of a big open area with a freely controllable camera where you can just catch a bunch of Pokemon. A lot of people call it, the closest thing that Pokemon has to, a Breath of the Wild experience. But at the same time, and I know a lot of people are going to get on me for saying this game sort of shows the biggest of this area shows the biggest blemishes of the game. It looks bad graphically, and if you're connected online, it can run kind of poorly. The game's already clocked in at 30 FPS, locked in, that's fine, but your game should not be dipping below that, especially in the outer worlds, even if you're offline. Whenever I'm connected online and I'm trying to see if other people want to do max raid battles, weather changes will often cause the game to, skip frames or to freeze for brief moments, which I think is inexcusable. It annoys me so much. And speaking of max raid battles, their joy, or their novelty, wears off after a few matches. I also think that the later ones, the higher level ones, are unbalanced. I do not like being attacked 3 to 4 times in a row, especially on the first or second turn. When you have a higher starred Pokemon, 3 stars and above, the Pokemon will sometimes put up a barrier, and your attacks are severely reduced, and then when you break that barrier, the the opposing Pokemon's defense goes down. And, like, you know, just break the barrier, but they have different, like, little HP tiers. Sometimes you need to break it 3 times. Sometimes you need, like, a total of 6 or 7 hits to break a barrier. And it gets absurd. And for 5-star raids, which I think are the most broken ones, you need to break their barrier twice. So they have 2 rounds of them saying, the Pokemon's getting desperate. It's putting up a barrier to protect it from attacks. It feels horribly unbalanced. Like, I can do a 1 to a 4-star raid, not really any problems. 5-star raids are complete luck when you're playing by yourself, because they just give you randomly generated computer players, and they can have a random selection of Pokemon. Sometimes you just get stuck with, like, the shit end of the stick. It's not fun. After a little while, it's really not fun. Visually, all of the stuff about the wild area is true. Pokemon popping in and out of nowhere, like, objects, areas, assets pop in and out of nowhere with, like, no real cool effect besides maybe a cloud of dust popping up. It just looks very unappealing. And of course you have, like, the Ocarina of Time trees. A lot of textures seem very basic and stretched out, which I know isn't uncommon, but it's very apparent that this looks like a 3DS game, and it would have been fine on, like, the new 3DS. But this is the Switch. I'm sorry, but, like, it doesn't look that good at all. Regular game, like, non-wild area, it looks acceptable, I guess. But when you're in the wild area, a lot of these blemishes show that it is not good. Now for this next point, maybe this is just coming from somebody who's played Pokemon for a couple decades now, well, almost a couple decades, but I just found it to be very easy. I know a lot of people have said that ever since Pokemon made the jump to 3D, it's become, like, progressively easier with things like the experience share and changing the way that experience is sort of distributed, but I just felt it to be really easy this time around. I know, they reworked the way that experience share works, but I was typically, like, at least 3 to 4 levels over-leveled by the time I got to, like, the Champions area, the League, and the endgame, like, boss stuff. I was just sweeping through pretty much everything. The closest thing that I had trouble to was in the post-game, the final battle with Hop, because Zacian is fucking crazy. It was literally down to the wire with that battle. But other than that, pretty much no problems. I was sweeping through everything. Overall, with Pokemon Sword and Shield, I guess what pains me the most is just, like I said, how average the game feels. It's not too memorable outside of a few key characters. I was not a fan of Hop, and I know that he goes through character development. I know he has his own arc, but I just couldn't gravitate towards him. I couldn't get behind a lot of the plot because it feels like there really is none, at least not from your perspective. Other characters are doing these interesting things, and you're being told, no, you can't do that. Just do the gym challenge, smile and wave. However, before I wrap this review up, there is one thing I did remember that I want to talk about. I do not know why it stood out in my mind, but I just found it funny for some reason. So about after the 4th gym, Bede gets disqualified from the gym challenge. Bede is your, like, other rival, like the really assholey guy that kind of looks like an old woman, but he's a little boy! But that's not the point. So, Bede gets disqualified for tampering with some of the old, like, Galar, historical ancient relics and stuff. And, he's really, like, torn about it. He's like, oh, there must be some issue. I'll go to Chairman Rose and get the endorsement back. And then Opal, who's the 5th gym leader, the fairy-type one, the really old woman, notices Bede, and she is like, this child is decked out in pink. I fucking like him. And so she takes him, sends him to, like, puts him, like, through a boot camp style training to become the next gym leader for the Balloonly gym, the fairy-type gym. And then the next time you see Bede isn't until the beginning of the league, where he barges in and says, you have no idea what I've been through. I've been put through a boot camp because of that old hag. There was pink. So much pink. Very light shades of purple too, but mostly pink. Oh god. I feel like I am part fairy now. Bow me! I don't know why that was so funny, but I laughed the first time I played it because this kid has everything taken away from him, and then he's sent to, like, a little training regiment that kind of drives him nuts a bit-ish. Like, not nuts in the way of he goes crazy, but you can tell that he did not like going through that little trial of his own. Fucking Bede. So, anyway, after that little, experience that I had that I thought was pretty funny, I will once again reiterate that Sword and Shield are just... they're missing some things. I feel like they're missing some key components to Pokemon that have been mainstays, that, weren't hurting anyone, they weren't necessarily archaic, but they're just gone now. It feels like an incomplete experience, like it's maybe about 2/3 complete. Again, it's very difficult to describe, but I think that if you've played previous Pokemon games, and then you play Sword or Shield, you'll sort of feel it. It feels like the new content that they added is not enough to supplement the removal of previous content, like very mainstay stuff that had been a part of Pokemon for years. And after reading some interviews and sort of just seeing other things happen, I can't say that I'm completely 100% positive on Pokemon's future, at least in terms of the games. I'm not a big fan of, giving out scores to video games, but I guess if I had to, I'd give Pokemon Sword and Shield a 5 out of 10. And of course, you can completely feel free to disagree, let me know what you think in the comments, just, of course, be civil about it. But, that's pretty much all I have to say about Sword and Shield. This has been Evan Uno, and I hope you have an ultra awesome day or night. See you real soon.